I have my February Open Gate Quilt subscription box here, and I'm ready to dive in and see what is inside. This is my favorite quilt box to receive. In this box, you receive two projects to work on, a large project and a small project, and then other notions and supplies to help you with your quilting. Now, this video is going to be a little bit longer than it normally is because I really want to share with you what I look for in a good quilt box, and I think the best way to do that is to work through the project so I can really explain why this one is my favorite. So there are two projects that are in this box. I don't know what they are yet, but I am going to work through them in this video, share with you how to complete them and what I received in this box to help me complete them. So let's dive in and take a look at what the projects are in this month's Open Gate Quilt box. All right, so let's open this up and see. We always have some tissue paper here with a sticker to keep everything nice and together. And we have the Open Gate Quilt box sticker on the lid of the box. So I'm going to open this up, and then on right inside is a paper that tells me all about all the projects and the extras in the box. This paper also now has a QR code on it that will take you to the videos instead of having to type in the long, web page that has a ton of symbols and letters. So that is really helpful that they now switch to a QR code. And the only reason I know that without reading it all is because I did get an email from Open Gate Quilts giving some updates, and that was one of them. All right, so on to the fun stuff. Oh, there's a lot in here this time. Okay, I'm going to move the box out of the way because I feel like it can get kind of distracting on seeing that on the side, and I like to just focus on all of the goodies here. All right, so I'm going to lay these out in the order that they are on the paper I mentioned so that I can work through them in that manner. So I actually think this goes with the first project. So I want to be clear up front, this item is an add-on, and it is $12 a month to receive extra fat quarters. So there are 4 fat quarters in here. They coordinate, and you also get a pattern for fat quarters. So let's start at the beginning. This is our larger project. It is project 1, and it says it is double date or log cabin paper piecing. So in this project, we get fabric for the top and binding, and it is fabric from the Fleur Noir by Riley Blake Fabrics. And we also get a pattern and pictures to show us what they will look like. So you can see here that this is going to be a table topper or a wall hanging that measures up to about 23 inches by 23 inches. So in this, we receive everything we need to work on the project except the binding and backing. That means a lot to me because I'm not having to invest a lot of money to complete this project. I can finish the top of it and have the project almost finished without having to purchase anything else. Now, for this size quilt, I probably won't even have to purchase batting or backing to finish it because I could look through my fabrics and see if I already have something that will work well with this, maybe a solid black, or piece together some black fabric that I have in the batting. I likely have a piece from another project that is large enough to finish this project. Now, when I work through it, I will let you know if I had to add anything else in. So let's take a look at this because it looks like here we have paper piecing to finish this project, and then a pattern that will also, if we're not comfortable with foundation paper piecing, a pattern to complete it in a different way. I actually really love that because not everybody loves paper piecing. Maybe there are people who would like to give it a try, and this is a fun way to do that. But really, we get 2 patterns here. So if we work on one, we could pull fabric from our stash and work on another version of it. I really love the fabric. Oh my goodness. Okay, so here are the fabrics I have for this project. So I have this gorgeous floral. I love that. I need to buy like all of that. Then I have a solid black. It looks like it's on like a thin border there. I have this super cute kind of like plus on a black background. And then I have some plain white. So it is so funny because if you watched my recent unboxing for the Sew Sampler, I shared some fabric that I purchased while I was on not really a vacation, kind of a mini vacation because we were at my daughter's soccer tournament, but I got a bunch of black and white fabric because I said I wanted to complete a black and white quilt that I've been wanting to make one. And then here we go. We have one here. And so this is something else I look for in a subscription box like this. Am I consistently getting projects that I would like to work on? And for this box, I almost always am. There have been very, very few projects in here that I'm like, I don't really like this. A while ago, there was a gnome project, and I've mentioned before, I'm not very into gnomes, but I completed it because I really liked the colors and I felt like it was something I could gift to somebody. So while I may like most of these, of course, sometimes there are going to be some that aren't my favorite, but because I get everything for it, a lot of times I work through it anyway because I can gift it. It's a lot different than getting a project that I get, you know, just a tiny bit of fabric for, and then I have to spend $100 to finish it. That fabric's just going to lay around. So for me, this is very important that I get so much of the fabric and things I need to complete it right up front, and I don't have to invest a lot more into it. All right. So for the next project, sorry, I want to put this pattern here with us so I don't lose it. So for the next project, we have a tape measure lanyard, and it includes the fabric for the lanyard, a 1-inch twill tape, a swivel hook, and the pattern. I need to look at something really quick because I just read something that I think I misunderstood. So it looks like the paper piecing we have for this is for 2 different ways to paper piece. So this is the log cabin beginner paper piecing, and then we have one for the other design. So they are both paper piecing, just different patterns that we'll be using. So a beginner log cabin, more of a design that you're familiar with seeing, and then one that is a little more challenging. So still 2 different patterns, just ones that will help you in different ways with your comfort level on paper piecing. Sorry about that. I glanced up at the project 1 and I saw challenging and then easy. So start with the first one if you haven't paper pieced before, the easy pattern, and then you could give the more challenging design a try after that. So sorry. Okay, so the tape measure lanyard. Let's open that up. I already told you what was all in here. So we have the swivel hook is provided, and then the fabric for it. So the cute little tape measure and the fabric. How cute is that? Now, this is fun because lanyards can often be used by us. I could see hooking some little snips on this when I'm working on a project so that I can keep them right on hand and not lose them, especially when I'm sitting and doing some embroidery, because I always sit down on the couch and they end up between cushions or something. So this is a fun little project and I'm excited to make that. So here is what it will look like when it is finished. And I think it'll be a nice, quick and easy little project. I love the fabric and I like that both the projects, the fabric kind of, goes together. And again, we got everything we need for it. We even got the little swivel hook. So that is nice and helpful. Here we have the notion of the month, an add a quarter ruler. I have a add a quarter ruler that looks different than this. This one says it has a 1/4 inch lip on it. I'm going to assume that that will make measuring up a little bit easier because it will kind of hit at the seam and stay nice and straight for us. So I don't know if you can see, it kind of has that little lip there. So if you're moving up against the fabric, it'll kind of hit there and it doesn't go any farther. So that is really nice. And it looks like it would come in very handy for our paper piecing that we are doing. Simplifies foundation piecing. So that is another thing that I love about this subscription box and is why it is one of my favorite, because these notions of the month and things that we receive often are used with one of our projects or both. So it's not like a notion that is just thrown in the box because, they were cheap or, Open Gates had extra of them. They are almost always included for a very specific reason. I love that because how else can you know if a notion works or is something that you can see yourself keeping and using if you don't use it for 4 months until 4 months later when you finally find a reason? No, when you work on this project, you will usually use it right away and know if it's something you like and want to keep in your space, because we do not have endless amounts of space for all these extra things that can be used with quilting. Now we have some Aurifil thread. Now, one thing I've always noticed with the subscription box as well is the thread is always coordinated to be used with our projects. We never get a color like, fabrics that are black and white this month, and then a bright orange thread that, we can't really use. Well, I guess you could use it for the project, but maybe one that you don't really want to use for the project. So we have the thread there. And then this month we have a fat quarter as an extra bonus item. Now, it usually switches between fat quarters and a free pattern. Monique goes back and forth on that because a lot of subscribers have said that they like both. They like getting a fat quarter sometimes and they like getting a pattern sometimes. So it goes back and forth on what the little extra might be. This is gorgeous. I love florals. That is one of the reasons I love this box too. It is a lot of different floral prints in here, and that is kind of the style I like. Now, if you don't like the fabric that you see in these unboxings a lot, it might not be the one for you. But for me, I almost always love the fabric that comes in it. It's definitely a similar style to what I would purchase for myself. So that means a lot to me. It's important. Now, if you are thinking about subscribing to this box because you're not already subscribed, and I've raved on and on and on about how much I like it because I don't have to invest a lot more in items to complete the projects, this is an option that you can add on for just $12 a month. So 4 fat quarters that are coordinating, and then you get a pattern that you could use your fat quarters in. So let me share with you the fat quarters that I received this month. I'm just gonna, I don't want to get a pair of scissors to cut that. So we'll just work them out. So here are my coordinating fat quarters, and let me see. Ooh, Wyndham Fabrics presents Civil War 7 by Nancy, year 1840 to 1885. So I think these must be reprints. You can let me know in the comments if I'm wrong, because I'm often wrong. I'm not that great at one, pronouncing things, and two, knowing lots about different fabrics. So there's that one. Ooh, so this says something different. This is Wyndham Fabrics presents Fairmont Park Industrial Revolution 1876 too, and then some of it's cut off. And then we got some polka dots here. So they all look lovely together. I don't know if they're all from the same line of fabric or different, but they all go very well together. And then we got this pattern here. Let me just see. So it says you can use a fat quarter bundle that has 20 fat quarters. And then you would need some white fabric, 4 3/4 yard for quilt top and border, or it looks like you could probably go with black. I would assume it's those accents there where the black is. And then you'll need 3/4 yard for binding and 5.5 yards for backing. So I have received a few of these now. I've just been keeping them for what I may want to use them with. I really like this pattern. I like that pop of black. I've been really into using black as a background, and kind of moving a little bit away from white sometimes because I feel like it really, really makes things pop. So I love that pattern. It's going to be one I set aside. I don't know if I'll use it for these, but I actually really, really love these 4 fabrics. I think they would look really great to put into a like a 4th of July Americana type quilt. It's coming up on summer soon, right? A little bit, maybe kind of getting close. It's been so cold here. So, a lovely bundle of fabric. One other thing you could think about adding on, if you do want to sign up for this box, is you could add on, for an additional $10 a month, you can add backing onto your subscription for $10 extra. So then you won't have to worry about finishing off the back of the quilt if you don't have the fabric in your stash. Maybe you don't have a large stash of fabric. I kind of do right now. So I can usually find something from my stash to finish these off with. So let's get started on a project. Just so you can see how these work up and see if you think this is something that you could complete fairly easily with your skills and as a quilter or someone who sews so far. All right, so for the lanyard project, I have the polka dot fabric from the kit, the tape measure twill tape, and I also have the swivel hook. I also grabbed some of my clips because I know they will come in handy once I get this all clipped together. So what I need to do first is fold the fabric in half. So this is the fabric, the polka dot main fabric. So I'm going to fold it in half and press it just so I can see where that center crease is. All right, so after finding the center of this strip of fabric, we're going to fold each edge into that center line that we created. So that crease right in the center. So you could either do one at a time, which might be a little bit easier, or if you're a rebel, you can fold them both into the center and do both at the same time. All right, so now that I have the seams pressed to the center along the long strip of fabric we have here, we're going to measure 2 inches in from the edge, and we're going to lay this measuring tape twill down along the center. Now, if you have double-sided tape or a machine that can handle double-sided tape, it will come in really handy here. I usually have it on hand for my bag making, but I do not have any right now. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to do this. It's not harder, but by putting clips in. So I'm going to add some clips through here, just lining this up. I'm just going to eyeball that it's down the center, but this is covering up those raw edges. So I'm just going to bring the twill all the way down through here, clipping along the way. And then I'm going to set up my sewing machine to be able to sew along the edge of the twill to hold it in place. I'm going to sew along both edges of it. Now, I can do that by putting on my eighth inch foot and sewing right along the twill, or I could probably keep my 1/4 inch foot on and line it up with the edge of the fabric, and that might put it right along the twill as well. That's going to probably depend on how well I line this up, but you know, I can decide when I get over to the sewing machine. So I'm going to clip this in place, and I'm going to sew along each edge of this twill. All right, so now when I get to the end here, you can see I have a little bit of extra fabric to the twill, and so I'm going to trim off 2 inches from the edge of the twill. And there we go. We are ready to sew along both edges of this. So I'm going to take it over the sewing machine and get that sewn up. All right, so now that I have the twill measuring tape sewn in place, it is time to complete the lanyard. Right side of the twill tape up, and it's folded in half here. We're going to place these together and insert the raw edges of the fabric into the D part of this swivel hook. And then it lined up. So we have both edges together. We're going to fold the tape under twice, or the fabric twice. So you see how I folded it down and then again, and it kind of covers up the raw edge of the measuring tape as well. So we've folded it twice and hid the raw edges. And now we're just going to sew a box around that edge to secure it in place. All right, so there is a finished project from this box already, and it is absolutely adorable. You'll have to tell me what you think of it in the comments. This twill is just absolutely adorable and perfect for a little lanyard for sewing. I imagine it's something fun that you could take along to quilt shows and things like that as well. Love it, love it, love it. All right, so we are going to be moving on to the next project now, the foundation paper piecing. Before I move on to the next project, I just had to share how cute it looks on. It is absolutely adorable, and it just happened to go with the black shirt I was wearing today. So there it is. All right, I'm going to move on to the next project and share that with you as well. All right, so I already got a little bit of a start on the log cabin project. This is the easy version of the large project, and you can see I have all the pieces here for one square left. I used these little wonder clips and some stickers on them to mark the numbers. The pattern did suggest to mark your pieces so you know which order they go in. These clips I received in one of my boxes from the Open Gate Quilt subscription, so they definitely came in handy here to mark all of the strips. So these are all the cuts that I need to make one of the paper pieced blocks. So I'm going to walk all the way through this, and you can see here they are all numbered and they correspond with the numbers on the cuts, and all of the cuts are nicely numbered on a chart in the pattern as well, so it makes it really easy. All right, so now we're going to work through the paper piecing pattern, and essentially we're going to start going in order of the numbers 1, 2, 3, and so forth. So the first piece of fabric we need to put down is on the number 1 slot. And what I like to do is put a little bit of the Elmer's glue right where the 1 is on the wrong side of the paper. And then I lay the 1 fabric right over it. And you'll want to make sure you cover kind of all of the lines that are around the 1 square. Since this 1 fabric is pretty large, it's pretty easy to make sure you've covered all of it. And then what I do is I want to crease where that line is between 1 and 2. I kind of like to flip it over, and then I can see the line a little bit easier when I'm folding. So I'm just going to fold a crease there. This add a quarter ruler comes in so nice for creasing. And then on this side of the paper, I can see where that line, creased line is. And that's where I want to line up my number 2 fabric. So our number 2 fabric is the black fabric, and it's the same cut for number 2 and for number 3. So I'm going to grab both of those because I'm going to need them back to back, and I'll just set one to the side. And then I like to grab the glue again, and just outside of my crease line is where I put the glue. I try to keep it within the seam allowance, but it'll wash away and it dries clear. So if you don't get it all the way on there, that's fine. And then our fabric is going to go right sides together. And you'll just want to make sure that when it goes to get flipped up, that it'll cover all of that section for number 2. And it should. It's a nice big piece of fabric. That glue just helps hold it in place for me so that it doesn't move around so much when I go to sew. And then you're just going to sew right along that line between 1 and 2. So I just sew right along there. I usually back stitch once or twice just to make sure that that's secure there, because it makes me happy. I don't think you have to or anything. So then I'll fold up at the crease and I can trim away all of this excess fabric that's there. So I have the little rotary cutter and my board right next to me so I can do that. This is when you'll want to grab that add a quarter ruler, because when that paper and everything's folded over, the add a quarter just lines up right next to it, and it makes it really easy to trim the fabric away. And then keep it close by, because I have found that it also comes in really handy for kind of finger pressing this, so you don't have to go to the iron right away and go back and forth between pressing and getting this ready for the next fabric that goes on. So I press in both directions with this, and it really helps get this pretty flat so you can just move along to the next one. So now we're going to be looking for the number 3. We have 1 and 2 on, and you'll just do the same thing. You'll fold at the crease for number 3. I'll use that add a quarter ruler sometimes to like really make sure I get a nice crease line there so that I can see where to put my glue. So I put it right along the crease, right above it. that is where the number 3 fabric is going to go down, right sides together. And as long as I have it hanging off both sides of this fabric, I know that it should cover enough to make sure that I have it far enough over. So now we're going to sew right along 1 and 2 and between 3. So that line right there. So you just sew right on the line, and then we'll fold over again and trim. So use that add a quarter ruler, trim it off. We'll fold it and finger press. If you'd prefer going and using your iron to press it to make sure it's nice and pressed, definitely do that if you'd like. I just think, you know, this makes it go a little bit quicker. And because of the paper piecing, it all comes out to the right size in the end. So I like working through it this way. Definitely nothing wrong with pressing if you feel like you need to. All right, so now we have 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to look for number 4. And you'll have the little reminder on here that it is the white fabric because you have the W. But you'll also have your marked pieces that show 4 and 5 are white. So it's just like some backup to make sure you're getting the right fabric. So we're going to put 4 on. We have a line crease, so we'll add the glue. Try to keep it within the seam allowance. And then just add on our white fabric right sides together. And then we'll sew along that number 4 line between where the 3 and 1 are. So we're just going to keep building this log cabin block in this manner. We'll just keep adding on the next number, trimming away any excess fabric. This ruler comes in so handy for that. And then you press or finger press, whatever you feel more comfortable with, and just keep adding on. So now we're going to be looking for the number 5 strip here, and it shows that it is another white strip. Add some glue to hold it in place. Press our fabric on. And here you see it's not quite long enough, so I'm going to check on the other side to make sure I'm covering everything up. So you could fold and crease if you need to make sure, and it definitely looks like I'm within the seam area, so I think I'll be good. All right, so now we're going to be doing 6 and then 7. And so then we're back to the dark fabric again. All right, so now that all the strips are sewn on, you can see on the back that everything is covered, and you'll have some cut lines that you can follow to trim this block. So you will have two lines. You want to trim the outer line because the inner line shows you your seam allowance. So I'm going to trim around this outer line. And now we have our finished block. So now I have all of the components for this quilt finished. You can see I have my binding here. This was part of the kit that we received. And then I have the inner border strips cut. These were part of the kit as well. And then the outer border. So I'm going to get this all sewn up. All right, so here is my finished quilt top. This is with the Easy Paper Piecing Log Cabin. I absolutely love how it turned out. So everything was provided in the box to complete the top and the binding. So all I'll need to add on is some batting and a yard of fabric for the back. I think that's a pretty great deal for this to have a cute table topper. You could use some cheaper muslin fabric or something like that, but you likely may have a yard in your stash, and I definitely know I have batting scraps that will work perfect for this. So not a lot to add on. Now with this month's project, I am so excited because if you remember, we were also given an advanced option to work on. So I had all of the paper piecing papers to complete this version of the quilt, and I have papers to complete the advanced version of this quilt. So I'm going to set this to the side. And yes, I haven't torn out the papers yet. I am going to tear them out before I layer this and quilt it. Okay, so on the advanced paper, I pulled some of my own fabric to complete this quilt. And what I'm going to do right now first, though, is mark these lines. And I am going to cut this in half because it definitely makes it easier to paper piece if you have them in two different sections. So for this version, you're going to paper piece each of these separately and trim them, and then you sew them together to complete one block. So I'm going to use the chart and mark these since I hadn't already. So white, black, white, black, white, black, white, and then the same on this one. Now I'm actually not using white fabric, or I'm not using white or black fabric. I'm using a gray and a blue, so the V will work. I probably should have written gray, but I know what it is. I'm just still stuck on the other pattern that we did. So I have the fabric cut for this one. I don't have them marked because the lengths are really easy to follow. Oh no, my pin. I'm going to need to, before I touch fabric, go wash my hands. Good grief, I'm a mess. So this one, I found it really easy to follow because the longest strip goes on the bottom and then you work in reverse to the smallest. So I'll of course show you that as I work through it, but I do want to show you the blocks that I have completed so far. So I just used some scrap fabric I had to cut the pieces for this. And I do want to tell you that if you want to complete both of the projects in here, this one is really particularly nice to complete with scrap fabrics because you can just keep the bottom to the same to get the look, then the next, and then the top. I think it would look really good if you did a dark, a medium, and then a light and alternated through here. I think it would look really good that way. So what I did was I just cut the fabric per the chart and made sure each petal kind of matched on it. So when I complete these two, it'll go here, and then I can sew these together and border it how I would like to. But even though this says it is an advanced pattern, I found it really easy to still follow. So if you haven't done any paper piecing before, do the log cabin version first, the easy version, and I think you'll see how this works and be able to work through this one really easy as well. I'm going to let this ink dry a little bit, and then I will walk you through working on this. I just don't want it to smear all over. I don't know what's up with that pen that I was using, but we'll get it figured out. So I'm going to move over and work through this. I'll show you how I worked on this pattern, and I still use that school glue for it to hold everything in place, but I found it really quick to work through, and I actually like working through both triangles at the same time, so I'll show you that as well. All right, so again, we're going to be working on the back of the paper. That's where all our fabric is going to build. So I'm going to put a generous amount of glue over the first slot, where the white strip is going to go, or in my case, the gray. And what I like to do is I can kind of see through the paper because it's a very lightweight paper. I just want to make sure that I cover over where the seam allowances are. So as long as I get that covered, I'm doing good. So that is where our number 1 strip goes. Then I fold up and crease right along where the 1 and 2 pieces would meet. I'm going to do that on both. And then we're putting on a blue strip. So where the crease line is, right above it, I'm going to try to, again, stay within the seam allowance. Sometimes I don't, but I try to stay there. I'm going to put a little bit of the glue. So I'm not sure if you can see the crease line on camera, but if you're working on your own through a paper piece project, as long as you're above the crease line, you're doing good. So I'm going to get the next strip, which would be strip 2, and it should be your strip that is either black or a color that you chose. And I'm going to lay it across there. You want to be about 1/4 of an inch above that crease line that you made. So I'm just going to press it down, attaching it to the glue. And you could kind of fold it up and make sure that you're covering over that area, right, on both sides, because you want to cover up over where the seam allowance is on both sides. So I kind of flip it up a little bit to make sure I'm doing good. So I'm going to do that on both of these. And this is our number 2 strip. So about 1/4 of an inch above that crease line we made. And then when you flip it up, you want to see that it covers along both sides of the triangle over here. And then we'll just flip it over and sew along that solid line between 1 and 2. Okay, and I'm going to do that on both of these. So fold the paper away and trim your excess fabric. And fold up and press. All right, I like to use add a quarter ruler and press a little after trimming, and then I'll fold again to get that crease I need between the 2 and the 3. So for the number 3 fabric, I need a white strip. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue and grab my number 3 strip. Make sure it's about 1/4 of an inch above the crease and lay it across. Make sure it'll cover up along both sides of the seam, and then sew across. And I'll keep working in this manner to build this block. So I'll trim. And I'll flip it up, press, and I'm going to do the same thing with my other block here. All right, so now that these are both sewn, I pressed them with some heat this time, and now I'm just going to trim around the outer solid line. All right, so now that they are trimmed, you can sew them together, and you'll want to make sure that it makes this beautiful design. I would highly recommend adding some pins in so it doesn't shift as you sew. There's a lot of bulk through here, especially if you leave the papers on. So add a few pins and then head over to the sewing machine, sew it, and you could press it. I like to press the seam open on these, but you could press them however you would like. All right, so here is the advanced paper piecing pattern that I did with my fabrics. It turned out just as lovely. I really love this design. And then just as a recap, here is the project with the fabric from the subscription box. This is the easy version of paper piecing, and it is the log cabin easy version. This is all the fabric from the kit as well as the binding for when I would go to finish it off. And here is that lanyard I made first. Absolutely adorable. Such a cute project. I loved everything in this box, and I love that I don't have to add a lot of other fabric in to complete the main project. Here, of course, I did because I wanted to complete the other design and just show it to you so that you could decide which one you want to do, or if you want to do like I did and grab some of your own fabric and complete it. I absolutely love this subscription box. It is my favorite to receive because I can work on so much of the project right away. I don't need to add in a lot of extra fabric to complete it. I absolutely love that aspect of it. All right, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you subscribe to this box? Have you started on these projects yet? I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.